Hello and welcome to my first Q&A. I have a couple of questions that I've been asked, and I was thinking that not only replying to the comment but also making a video, because most of the videos I do on this channel is for others. It's me filming things that I would most likely do anyway, but then putting it out there so maybe it can inspire or help someone else. So Q&A seems like a natural thing for me to do because I'm doing the videos to help others. So I've decided to make a Q&A and hopefully you'll enjoy it. I have a paper here and I'm gonna read the questions and hopefully we can answer them. The first question is from JTD and he says, would be cool to hear more about how you finished the guitar and also relicing. It looks cool. Also, if you have any idea for pickguards, I've tried so many things on those cheap white pickguards and nothing seems to accomplish a realistic vintage tint. Sorry. Yes, so the guitar that he is talking about is my Mike Bloomfield guitar. So this guitar right here, he wants to know a couple of questions about it. The thing is, as the video series was more about how I would have changed a guitar that I loved that was right-handed into a left-handed guitar, I built the guitar first. So I didn't really go over that much of how I ended up with the guitar. And the reason why I did things that way was because I wanted to be in the Tomine DIY kit challenge, but I also didn't really want to buy a guitar only to destroy or, mod. I wanted not only to take apart and, do these things too. And I think that it's one thing if you have a guitar that you love and you want to make it work better for you, but it's another thing to just buy a guitar to basically, ruin it. I don't really like that kind of thing. I've seen other YouTubers do things where they destroy guitars and it always rubs me the wrong way, and I always end up, not really liking those YouTubers anymore. So I don't want to be that kind of guy, and I don't want to, for clicks or views or whatever you want to call it, do something that I am morally not really agreeing with. You obviously do whatever you want. But anyway, so what I did was that I painted the guitar with regular paint. I have a spray gun, it looks like this. And when I don't, show you how I spray paint a guitar or lacquer it or something like that, I usually go that way. It's a more, professional way to do things, and it's actually a lot easier when you gotten to the place where you can do those things. I just haven't gotten to the point where I'm gonna make videos about that yet, because I still want this to be sort of like DIY and on the cheap and those sort of things. But basically, you can buy lacquer in cans. You don't have to buy it in spray cans. You can buy actual cans, like these sorts of cans. This is not lacquer, but I'm just using it as an example. They come in this can. You can thin them out, and you can spray paint the body. And all I've done is what I did was I looked at a picture of Mike Bloomfield's guitar because I was making a replica, and I cut out in masking tapes pieces of masking tape that looked like all these little markings on the body, and I tried to make them as close to his as I could without putting too much effort into it, because I felt like this is just an educational thing that I'm doing. I'm not actually going 100%, like this has to be a one-to-one replica. It was more of a you get the idea, this is a old guitar, and it was just again to show the value of the guitar. I hope that makes sense. And then I put those masking tape pieces on the guitar where they were supposed to go. Like if you look at his guitar, for example, he has a lot of going around the edge. Like I've never really seen that much on an actual vintage guitar that I've either looked at a shop or worked on. They usually don't have that much wear. And he also, for example, he has a ding right here in the middle. So I tried to mimic those with masking tape. And then I just painted the guitar white, and I just used a regular store-bought white. Because If you look at his guitar, it's more yellow in the middle, and then around the edges where it's worn and things like that, it's more regular white, you know. And I think the white I used was called like charcoal white or something like that. I didn't, again, pay that much attention to it because I wasn't trying to like create a vintage guitar that was perfectly vintage. I was just doing an educational piece. And then I took the clear lacquer that I was going to use and I just dyed it with this spirit-based lacquer stain, which is basically something you can buy in most hardware store. It's just a stain that is lacquer, has lacquer in it, and you have to just match it up, basically, is what I'm trying to say, with the kind of lacquer you're using. So if you're making a water-based paint, you need to buy the water-based, and if you're making a guitar that has spirit-based lacquer on it, you have to buy the spirit-based. It's not that hard, it's not that complicated. And then I just, you know, clear coated the guitar like I would, but with a tint to it, basically. And I put on like thin layers with not that much color in them, and then I just painted in the middle because I know his guitar is more tinted in the middle than on the sides. I just put on more of the tint in the middle, sort of like a reversed sunburst thing. It's not, you know, if people are really interested in seeing me do this, I could definitely do it in the future. So that's basically how I did the paint job and the relicing. The relicing is just masking tape, basically, and I just cut out masking tape to look like the shapes on the guitar that I wanted, and I just put them around. He also wants to know about the pickguard, and if you've played any, let's say, beginner guitars or more inexpensive guitars, plastic they use for those pickguard are not the same kind of plastic that they use for more high-end guitars. Let's say €1,000 or, you know, something like that up. I don't really know where it changes, but there is some sort of plastic difference between pickguards and the really, you know, cheap pickguards, as you say. They are made of a plastic that doesn't really take like the stain of like coffee or tea that well. So what I would do is, again, I would sand the pickguard and then I would paint it with this, and I would use spirit to water it down or spirit it down, so I could put on a really thin coat so it doesn't look that, you know. That's how I would have done it if I was gonna keep that pickguard. And I'm actually gonna, because I feel like I could do this even easier, I'm gonna try to see if I can find the pickguard, because I don't really know where I have it right now. But I'm gonna find the pickguard and I'm gonna do a video for you. I don't know when it's gonna come out because I have a lot of things to do right now, so I'm kind of busy. But in the hopefully not too distant future, I will take that pickguard and I will just show you. But basically sand the pickguard with like 400 grit and then move your way up to 1200 and then dye it, basically. Lacquer based stain. And you find that in your woodworking shop. Or I hope that helped. Let me know if that is confusing. But yeah, I'll make a video about that, because I have the pickguard. It's not doing anything, might as well use it. Okay, so next question is from Ray Ortega, who says, the part where you just sanded it, where your arm would wear it out and play, how is that done? Would love to see the process too. Which sandpaper, machine, and how? Thanks. So, he is talking about this guitar, and he is referring to the video called How I Relic a Polyfinish, which is actually one of my most viewed videos, and I'm really happy about all the people who seems to enjoy it. I get a couple of trolls, but that's okay. I suppose that's what you get for making videos. Anyway, he is talking about how I did the sanding through on this side here. And he also wants to know what sandpaper and what machine. And first thing is sandpaper. I did the sides, I sanded by hand, because the machine I'm using only works on flat surfaces. And I'm gonna show you an example real soon of not taking my advices and learning from my own mistakes. The thing is, I'm using this machine. This is a random orbital sander, It has a sanding disc on the underside, and the way it works is that it spins around, but it also moves like this. So you get a like weird sanding pattern that is supposed to make it so that you don't get like scratches in the wood. Now you're using this to sand lacquer, so I would say that if you're gonna the coarsest grid of sandpaper that you can start off with is gonna be 400. When I did this guitar, started off with 1000 grit sandpaper, and I used wet and dry sandpaper. The way I did it is that under the pickguard here, I found a place where I could scrape with a knife to see how many layers and how thick the layers are before I get to the actual wood. And then I just decided to, okay, I know that 1000 grids is really fine, and so I'm gonna be able to sand here without, you know, burning through too quickly. If you put a random orbital sander with like 80 grit sandpaper on your guitar like this, you're gonna burn through all the layers in a couple of seconds. It's gonna go so fast, it's gonna be too late. So, really high. And I worked my way up from 1000 to, I think, 2000 actually. And then I buffed the guitar back. And the way I buffed it back is I have these buffing wheels that I can put in my drill, and I can just buff it. Now you can do the same thing with hand. By hand, you just pressure. The only thing you have to think about is you need to have enough pressure and movement to create warmth. And then I just bought a buffing compound for cars, and I basically used the same things that I would use to polish the lacquer on, you know, the hood of my car or something like that. Now there are a couple of things you need to think about when using a random orbital sander. And the thing is, it's flat. It can only sand flat surfaces. Don't ever try to use it to do curves or round overs or anything like that, especially not if you're using it on, you know, lacquer or something like that. You sand the entire front of the guitar, and you sand the entire back of the guitar. And then you do the same thing by hand on the carve here and on the sides here, around. And it's just to remove the clear coat that is on the guitar. The guitar is like this. You have wood, you have a sanding sealer that lies on top, and then on top of the sanding sealer you have your paint job, and on top of your paint job you have your clear coat. And on poly finishes, the clear coat is really, really, really thick. And if you look at an old vintage guitar, for example a Stratocaster from the 60s, you will see that the clear coat is like a 1/100th of the clear coat on a new modern guitar. It's so much thicker. And that's one of the issues I have with people saying that I should play the guitar until it wears out, because a poly finish will never wear out. It won't happen. I have guitars that are older than me and they look new. And that's actually a good thing. It's great. It's better to have something that will last forever than something that won't. So, so no shame there. But yeah, anyway, the thing is, you basically have to sand the entire guitar, the flat surface of the guitar, and then you have to sand here as well. And you can do it with the machine, but you have to make sure that you're extremely careful where the two surfaces meet, because you basically have the flat of the top and you have the flat of the arm carve, and in the middle you're gonna have a weak spot basically where they meet, and you will super easily sand that away and you get a weird line there. And I have another guitar that I made before I really knew that much about, how a sander like this works. So I'm gonna show you what happens, or what it looks like if you do that. And you're gonna agree with me that it doesn't look vintage correct. I still love the guitar. And then you just have to follow the rest of the steps that I shared with you in that video. Just, buff the lacquer afterwards, because you need to get it back to having a nice gloss. You don't want to, ruin the clear coat. You just want to remove at least half of it. It's really thick. But make sure you look inside the cavities. You can look on the back here, for example, and try to figure out. And you just polish it back up, some sort of buffing compound. So here is a guitar that I made a couple of years ago. No, actually 5 or 6 years ago. And as you can see here, I burned through the lacquer in a very weird way. And that's because if you think of the underside of the orbital sander, it needs to always be lying on a flat surface. and as it tilted over the edge here, it just burned through it all and flattened this curvature, or whatever you want to call it, the curve here, and it just burned through, and it looks weird. And so yeah, the way I did this though with the sander, which is the question, is that I basically let the sander run over it, and I used it to get that effect, because that is the effect you want right here on the upper. So it's like, you're not supposed to do it that way, but you can do it, because that's, you know, that's the danger of the machine to your piece. I hope that makes sense. But basically, by letting the sander roll over the edge a little bit, it will try to flatten this out. And if you're using sandpaper like 1000 grit, you can, you know, it will take longer time, so you can concentrate on it and make sure that it doesn't go too fast and go too crazy. And you just have to be very careful so that your sander is leaning on that edge and is taken away, but it's only taking away enough so that it burns through the clear coat and the paint job, because you don't want it to dig in and make a real mark. So yeah, use high grade sandpaper and, you know, take off a little bit, look at it, clean it off, you know, make sure that you're not going crazy, because then you might get a mark like this. And it looks, I mean, if you look at like the back of the guitar, for example here, I'm gonna see if I can show you, like those marks there, I think they look perfectly fine and at least somewhat natural. The same thing with the back of the neck, it looks, and I like the arm carve here. I like the relic up here. I think that looks really nice, but I don't like this mark here. And maybe at some point I'll, you know, refinish the guitar and I'll do all the work, but it's also kind of good to have a guitar that reminds you of mistakes you made. Okay, so the next question is also from JTD, and he says, I have a short scale bass with a 43mm nut width neck, which feels way too wide as a guitar player. Do you think it's possible to make it narrower, for example 38mm like a J bass, in order to get a smooth taper up and down the neck? I'm thinking about using either sandpaper or a rasp. Only problem is potentially unslotting the frets in the process. Unfortunately, I don't have many power tools like a belt sander, which would probably be good for this. It's a cheap bass, so worried about working on it, but never fretted anything, so I'm trying to avoid that. All tips are welcome, thanks. Yes, so what he is talking about is the video where I showed you how I would reshape the back of a guitar neck. So for example, here I have a neck, a beautiful Wenge neck, and in the video I talked about taking this measurement and basically shrinking it down to make a neck that is thinner. But what he wants is basically to thin it down this way, make it narrower. And I'm gonna briefly just say how I would have done it with the tools I have, and then I'm gonna try to help you out with how I would have done it in your situation. I have a guitar neck template here, and I would have just measured in from both sides the amount I need to take away. So for example, if you want to take away, let's say 2mm, you go 1mm in on this side, all the way down like this, and make a line, and 1mm in on this side. I would most likely pull the frets and put masking tape on and measure everything out, and then I'd make a template and put on the side, and I would use a router to remove it. That would probably be easier, because refretting a guitar is not that hard. I mean, it's a lot of work and things like that, but you know, if you gotta do it, you gotta do it, and it's not the end of the world, basically. I would say that the idea of just running a belt sander along the sides would probably work. The things I would consider is, first, you have to mask everything off. You have to draw out the lines so you know where to stop, just like I showed you on the template. And I would be very careful so that when you're using the belt sander, you don't heat up the frets as you move in on them, because if they get heated up, they might actually just pop out anyway. So I would probably try to go in, you know, I would probably try to go slowly and move in. Now, something you have to think about is this might sound it might sound harder than it actually is, but that's because your neck is basically round like this on one side and flat on the top, or you know, not completely flat. You have a radius of the fretboard, but the meat of the wood is in the middle, you know, where the truss rod is. On the outside, if you're just going to take a bigger mill, you only have, you know, a tiny bit of wood there. So it's not necessarily that hard. Obviously, you're going to have to reshape the neck afterwards. And, you know, I have a video where I show you how to do it. I use this tool from one of my guitar builder's life hacks, and I just go over the neck. But you could use a rasp or something like that as well. So yes, that would probably be the best way to make it fairly easy and quickly. Obviously, taking pauses to make sure the frets aren't, you know, heating up too much. But if you're holding the neck, you'll feel the frets, and if you start to feel like they're burning you, you know you should stop. How I would do this with hand tools: I would mask off the fretboards, just, you know, all the in between the frets here, and I would draw out the line, just like I've already told you, making sure my measurements are correct. And I would use a rasp, something like this, for example, to remove the wood, because it's, you know, it has a lot of teeth and things like that. And I would actually only go forward like this and not pull it back. And I know that people are saying that, oh, well, the reason why you think that is because you think that you will ruin the teeth, but it's not completely true. It's also because you have more accuracy with your tool if you're going down, away, down, away, down, away. Because this is one of those times where you have to be really sure that you're making everything perfect. And that's where this is going to get hard to do with hand tools, because you don't want the neck to be, you know, a little bit wavy like this. If the neck is completely straight like this, it will work good for you, but if it's just a little wobbly like this down the neck, it's one of those things that you're gonna notice, and your hand is moving up and down that all the time, so you'll feel it too. But then I would only use that to remove the wood, so I would basically have a fretboard that had small bumps wherever the frets are. And I would use a metal file. I would use a square one, and I would try to find one that is about the size of the fret, a little bit bigger. And then I will just work my way down here, and I would only do down. So I would basically go like this, down at the fret, away from the neck, and down again and away. And that is just so that my file don't catch the fret and pulls it out, so that you don't have to worry about that. I would most likely also hold the fret down with my hand like this and move down, away, until everything was smooth and flat. And then maybe take something like a flat piece of wood that I know is straight, wrap some sandpaper around it and move it back and forth like this to remove the last 1/3 of a mil or something. Yes. And then after that, you're gonna have to make a new nut, and you're gonna have to find a new alignment for that, because the old nuts strings, especially the 2 E strings, are most likely gonna be, it's basically gonna be on the outside, is what I'm trying to say. So yes, that's how I would do it, and I hope this helped. I hope I explained things well enough for you to understand what I'm trying to say. That's the Q&A. I hope you liked it. I hope you got something out of it, and even if these were questions that maybe you didn't actually want the answers to, I hope you enjoyed the video anyway, and maybe learned something, or I don't know. If you have any questions that you want me to bring up in a video and make a Q&A of, or that you actually want me to make a full-length video about, write comments below and tell me that, hey, this would be a great thing for you to make a Q&A of, or this is a video I would love for you to make. You know, comment below and we'll see what happens, because it's more interesting for me to make videos where I try to help you guys out with things you actually want me to help you out with, than me just thinking, oh, this might be something someone wants to know something about, and then not actually knowing if that is interesting at all. So yeah, talk to me in the comments below, let me know. I want to thank JTD for support and the nice comments. And I also want to thank Ray Ortega for his comment and his support of the channel. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope to talk to you guys again, and hopefully, you know, yes. Until next time, stay awesome and cool, and, you know, go and build something cool and interesting and fun, and then, you know, write comments below telling me about that, and maybe even sharing a video or something.